A widowed duke hid to see how his fiancée treated his twins, until the maid— Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The rain had finally stopped, but the sky over Weatherford Hall still looked heavy when the twins were carried in from their morning airing. "Your Grace," Nurse Ellen said, pausing at the study door. "Oliver is asking if he may see you before he takes his nap." Thomas Hargreaves looked up from the stack of estate accounts and saw 2 pairs of small boots dangling near the threshold. Oliver peered around the nurse's shoulder, cheeks flushed, hair undone. Behind him, Grace had her thumb in her mouth and clutched a worn cloth doll. Thomas set his pen down at once. "Come here, both of you," he said. They tumbled into the room with the serious clumsiness of 3-year-olds. Oliver marched straight to his father's chair and laid both hands on Thomas's knee as if making a formal appeal. "I saw a bird," he began. It was smaller than Nurse, but bigger than Grace's doll. It had a chest that looked like Mama's red shawl in the picture. Grace nodded, eyes solemn. "It hopped." Thomas felt the familiar ache in his chest at the mention of their mother, but he smiled anyway. "A robin, most likely," he said. "And what did the robin say to you?" Oliver frowned. "It said nothing. It was rude." Grace giggled. "It hopped," she repeated, as if that explained everything. "You must not take it to heart," Thomas said. "Birds have poor manners." He drew them closer for a moment, breathing in the clean, sweet smell of damp wool and fresh air. Then Nurse Ellen cleared her throat softly. "They must rest now, Your Grace. Lady Margaret asked that they be brought to the nursery when they return. She wished to look in on them herself." Thomas hesitated. Duty waited in the figures on his desk. Expectation waited in every letter from London. Somewhere between the two stood his children, needing things he was not always sure he knew how to give. "Very well," he said. "Tell Lady Margaret I shall come up later, if I may." Nurse Ellen gave a respectful bob and led them out, Oliver looking back over his shoulder as if hoping his father might change his mind and follow at once. He did not. Instead, he watched the door close and forced his attention back to the accounts. Land values, grain prices, coal shortages, bills that had been easy enough to settle when his father lived, and the world seemed steady. Times had changed. Rail lines, factories, new enterprises that needed capital he no longer possessed in abundance. That was why the engagement had been wise. Everyone said so. Lady Margaret Ashford's handwriting lay on the corner of the desk, a delicate note he had received that morning. "I have already begun to think of the children," she had written. "We shall make them quite the model family, you and I. I am sure we shall suit one another very well." It was not a passionate declaration, but then he had not sought passion. He had sought order, respectability, and the restoration of some security to lands that had been in his family for centuries. Margaret's father brought more than a generous dowry. He brought investments, trade connections, a network that could save Weatherford from slow decay. "And a mother for the twins," he murmured, closing the ledger. "That is no small thing." He pushed back his chair and walked to the window. From there he could see only the west lawn and the line of trees. Somewhere above, in the nursery, his children were with the woman who would soon become their stepmother. He tried to be grateful. He tried to imagine them gathered together at table, Margaret presiding with calm grace, Grace watching her, Oliver repeating her words, imitating her manner. Perhaps it would be good. Perhaps it would heal in some measured way the wound his home had carried for 3 years. Yet an unease stirred under his ribs, something he could not name. He shook it off and rang for his valet. There were letters that required his answer. A duke did not indulge in vague misgivings. He made decisions and stood by them. Upstairs, 3 corridors away, a maid carried a tray toward the nursery and wondered if it was her place to ask questions. Emily Carter kept her hand steady as she climbed the last of the stairs. The tray was not heavy, only 2 small bowls of broth, a slice of bread cut into careful squares and a jug of milk. But she had learned early in service that a clatter at the wrong moment could set the whole household on edge. She paused at the corner and drew a breath. The door to the nursery stood partially open. She heard nothing inside. "Broth for the little ones," she whispered, as much to herself as to the silent air. "At least they shall not sleep on empty stomachs now." Mrs. Harding, the housekeeper, had frowned when Emily asked if the children were to have their usual mid-morning meal. "Lady Margaret has taken a particular interest," Mrs. Harding had said. She sent word that the children are not to be fed without consulting her. Something about their digestion and proper discipline. You will do as you are told, Emily." "Yes, ma'am," Emily had replied. Then she had gone straight to the kitchens the first moment Lady Margaret was called elsewhere, and persuaded the scullery maid to prepare the broth anyway. "They are little," she had said, reaching for the bowls herself. "Little ones need regular meals, no matter who is soon to be Duchess." Now she nudged the nursery door with her foot and stepped inside. Oliver and Grace sat on the floor near the small table by the window. Oliver's knees were drawn up, his chin resting on them. Grace held her doll so tightly it looked in danger of losing its remaining stuffing. They both looked up when Emily entered, but there was no sparkle of mischief in their eyes, only a sort of cautious hope. "There you are," Emily said, lowering the tray to the table. "I thought perhaps you might be hungry." Oliver stood at once. "We are," he said simply. Grace nodded. "Hungry," she repeated. "Did you not eat earlier?" Emily asked, surprised. "Surely Nurse brought you something." "Nurse went away," Oliver replied. "Lady Margaret said she wished to be alone with us. She told Mrs. Harding we had already eaten, but we did not eat." He spoke with the gravity of a much older child, as if he had weighed the matter and found it wanting. Emily's stomach tightened. "Well," she said quietly, "you shall eat now." She ladled broth into the bowls and placed one in front of each child. Their spoons trembled a little from haste. She did not scold. The room was neat, toys in their places, curtains drawn to let in the pale afternoon light. Nothing looked wrong, but something felt wrong. The hush, the way the children glanced at the door between each mouthful. "Has Lady Margaret been here much today?" Emily asked, keeping her tone light. Oliver's spoon stopped midway to his mouth. "She said we must learn to sit still," he said. "She said we are too noisy. She does not like when Grace sings." "I was not loud," Grace whispered. "Only a little song. For the doll." Emily's hands tightened on the edge of the table. She had met Lady Margaret only a few times since the lady arrived almost a fortnight ago. The future Duchess was always perfectly dressed, perfectly polite, perfectly composed. She smiled at the twins when others were present and praised their fairness, their fine manners. She had never appeared cruel, but neither had she seemed truly interested in them, beyond what was proper to be observed. "Perhaps she is simply not used to children," Emily said. "Give her time." Grace nodded as if that made sense, but Oliver only bent his head and finished his broth with diligent determination. Later, when the tray was empty and she carried it back down the corridor, Emily told herself she had probably misunderstood. Perhaps Nurse had simply been called away at the wrong moment. Perhaps the kitchen had delayed the earlier meal. Perhaps. But unease settled in her chest and remained there all through the afternoon's work. 2 days later, she stood again in the kitchen, watching as a footman lifted a laden tray off the table. "For the nursery?" she asked, seeing the small plates and cups of milk. He shook his head. "No, Lady Margaret sent word the children have already been served, and that she wishes to take tea with His Grace alone today. This is for the drawing room." "But I just came from above," Emily said slowly. "Nurse told me she was waiting for the kitchen signal before setting the table. She said—" "Emily," Mrs. Harding's voice cut through the clatter, "you will not question orders that come from Lady Margaret. The household must adjust to her wishes. She shall soon be Duchess here." Emily bit back her reply. "Yes, Mrs. Harding." Later that day she passed the nursery again. The door was closed. From inside came a small, thin sobbing. She hesitated. It was not her place to intrude when the future Duchess was with the children. She pressed her hands against her apron, turned away, took 3 steps down the corridor. The sobbing did not stop. In the end, she did not knock. She simply stood there, heart beating too quickly until the sound faded. When the door finally opened, Lady Margaret stepped out, her expression perfectly calm, her gown unrumpled. "Ah," Margaret said, noticing Emily. "You are one of the upper maids, I believe." "Yes, my lady." "The children are resting," Margaret went on. "They can be quite excitable, but one must not indulge them. You will inform the staff that I am to approve any food sent up. We must avoid unnecessary sweets and idle snacking." Her tone was smooth, reasonable. It would have sounded entirely proper to anyone who had not stood outside the door, hearing little sobs. "Of course, my lady," Emily said, forcing the words past the dryness in her throat. Only when Margaret's footsteps faded did she dare glance into the nursery. The room was dim. Oliver sat on the edge of his little bed, staring at the floor. Grace lay curled under the blanket, eyes open and shining. The next morning, the pattern repeated. A meal not sent, a door closed, a command passed down through Mrs. Harding that unsettled her. "They are only 3, Emily whispered to herself as she polished the balustrade near the nursery stairs. "There is discipline and there is—" She did not finish the sentence. A maid did not make such judgments about her betters. Yet by the 4th day, when she found Oliver in a corner trying to quiet Grace's complaints of hunger by giving her his share of a single biscuit, something broke inside her careful obedience. "That is not enough for either of you," she said, kneeling. "Lady Margaret said we were naughty yesterday," Oliver answered. "She said we must not trouble the servants. She said it is better to feel empty than to be troublesome." Grace swallowed her half of the biscuit with obvious effort. "I am not troublesome," she whispered. Emily's eyes burned. "No, you are not." She went at once to the kitchen again, ignoring Mrs. Harding's disapproving look, and begged for a small pot of porridge. The cook grumbled but obliged. Emily carried it back up herself, hands steady only because she willed them to be. "Here," she said, setting the bowls on the table. "But you will eat." Grace looked nervously at the door. "If Lady Margaret come—" "You will tell her," Emily said with a bravery that surprised even herself, "that I insisted. You are not to be punished for another's doing." They ate quickly, casting anxious glances toward the corridor. No one came. Still, the unease grew. If she could see this much in her limited errands, what else did she not see? How many hours did the children spend behind that closed door without nurse, without food, without comfort? That night, lying awake on her narrow bed in the small room under the eaves, Emily stared at the ceiling and argued silently with herself. It may be nothing. You may be mistaken. Perhaps the children forget what they have had. Perhaps Lady Margaret has her own gentle method, and you are misreading what you hear. But she could not forget Oliver's solemn face when he said, "We did not eat." She could not forget Grace's thin whisper, "I am not troublesome." If she went to Mrs. Harding again, she would be told to hold her tongue. If she spoke to Nurse Ellen, she might only succeed in worrying the woman without giving her any power to act. There was only one person in the house whose authority could withstand Lady Margaret's. The thought terrified her. A maid did not write to a duke. A maid did not accuse his future duchess, even by implication, of neglecting his children. If she were wrong, she would not merely lose her position, she would be marked as a troublemaker, and no other house would take her easily. "But if I do nothing," she whispered, "I shall be marked by my own conscience, and I must live with that always." The rain began again outside, soft against the roof. In the dimness, the shape of the small table in the corner of her room seemed to stand out. She rose quietly, struck a match and lit the candle. Then she took the one piece of decent stationery she owned from the bottom of her trunk and sat down with the stub of a pencil. She stared at the blank page a long time. "Your Grace," she wrote at last, the letters careful, uneven. "Forgive a servant who may be overbold. I would not presume to speak if I were not much troubled." She did not embellish. She did not accuse Lady Margaret by name of deliberate cruelty. She simply set down what she had seen. Meals turned back, nurses dismissed, children left hungry, frightened by the sound of footsteps that should have brought comfort. She wrote of Oliver's grave attempt to shield his sister from hunger, of Grace's timid apology for existing. "My lord," she finished, "if I am mistaken, punish me as you see fit. But I beg you, look yourself to see how the children fare when you are absent. I will not sign my name, for I am a coward in this, yet I cannot lie to my own heart and say nothing." She hesitated over the last line, then added, "Please forgive me." The trembling in her hand grew worse as she folded the sheet. She did not seal it with wax. That seemed too grand, too presumptuous. Instead, she slipped it into a plain envelope she had taken from the writing table in the still-room and left it unmarked. In the morning, she rose before the household bell and waited in the passage near the study, letter pressed between her fingers. When the butler passed, she stepped forward. "Mr. Price," she said, keeping her voice low, "I found this under the door to the servants' entrance just now. It appears meant for His Grace." He took the envelope with a faint frown. "No direction," he said. "Strange." Perhaps the writer did not know how it should be addressed, she suggested, doing her best to look mildly curious rather than desperate. He shrugged and added it to the small stack of correspondence he carried. His Grace reads everything that comes, he said. He will know what to do with it. Emily retreated before her knees could fail her. Downstairs, Thomas accepted the morning's letters with the distant attention of a man who expects nothing but bills and formalities. He glanced through the familiar hands. His aunt, his solicitor, a member of Parliament. "What is this?" he asked, noticing the unmarked envelope. "Found at the servants' entrance, Your Grace," Mr. Price replied. "No direction. It may be nonsense, but custom requires I present it." Thomas opened it, expecting some petition for employment or aid. The first lines made him sit straighter. He read slowly, then more quickly, eyes moving back over certain sentences as if hoping they might change into something less disturbing. By the end, his hand had tightened on the paper until it creased. "Who brought this?" he asked, keeping his voice even. "Emily Carter, Your Grace." "One of the maids. She said she discovered it under the door." "Emily Carter," he repeated, tucking the letter into his inner pocket. "Thank you, Price. That will be all for now." When the butler left, Thomas stood in the middle of his study, the quiet tick of the clock suddenly unbearable. It could be a cruel jest. It could be some servant's spite against a mistress who would bring new order to the household. It could be nonsense entirely. Yet the letter had not sounded like nonsense. The language was simple, hesitant, marked by the spelling and hand of someone not accustomed to writing. There had been no florid accusations, no demand for reward. Only the plain, painful description of small, ordinary wrongs. "My lord, I beg you, look yourself." He might have put it aside and chosen to believe in Margaret's composure. He might have confronted her directly, demanded an explanation, and accepted whatever cool reply she offered. He found he could not. Instead, he waited until after luncheon, when Lady Margaret excused herself to write letters, and Nurse Ellen was told by Mrs. Harding that Lady Margaret wished to have the children to herself for the afternoon. The information reached him by chance, in an offhand remark from his aunt. "Margaret is with the twins," Lady Agatha said. "It is very good of her to take such early interest, Thomas. Not every young woman would." "No," he said quietly. "Not every young woman would." He left his aunt in the drawing-room, walked up the stairs and turned down the corridor toward the nursery, with a determination that surprised him. His own footsteps sounded too loud. He slowed, listening. No laughter, no chatter. Only, faintly, the rustle of movement from within. He opened the nursery door just a crack and saw that the room was empty. The twins' beds were neatly made. Toys were arranged in tidy rows on the shelves. The children themselves were nowhere in sight. "Nurse?" he called softly. No answer. A moment later he heard a small muffled sound and realized it came from the adjoining room, a closet used for linens and the children's clothes. He crossed the room quickly and put his hand on the knob. It resisted slightly, as if something were pressed against it. When he eased it open, two small faces looked up at him, eyes wide. "Papa," Oliver whispered. "Why are you in here?" Thomas asked, crouching at once. "Lady Margaret said we must be quiet," Oliver replied. "She said we disturb her when we play. She said we must sit here until we can behave." Grace blinked hard. "It is dark," she said. "I do not like the dark." Thomas swallowed. "How long have you been here?" Oliver shook his head uncertainly. "Many minutes." Thomas lifted them both out of the closet, his throat tight. He wanted to gather them into his arms and take them downstairs, away from this room, away from any door that could be closed between them and light. Instead, he set them on the floor, brushed their hair back gently, and forced his voice to remain calm. "Where is Nurse Ellen?" "She went away," Grace said. "Lady Margaret said she wanted no one else. She said she would make us good." The letter burned against his chest. "Listen to me," he said quietly. "I need you both to be very brave for a little while longer. Can you do that?" Oliver nodded at once. Grace nodded because he did. "I am going to step in here," Thomas said, indicating the closet. "You will leave the door just so, do you see? A little open. If anyone comes, you will not say anything about my being there. You will simply do as you always do. Can you do that?" Oliver's eyes widened. "Is this a game?" "Yes," Thomas said. "It is a game where Papa must listen very carefully. But I will be right here." Grace clutched his sleeve. "Will you be cross if we cry?" His heart nearly failed him. "No," he said. "I will not be cross." He kissed the tops of their heads, quick, impulsive, an old habit that had grown rare in his grief, and then stepped into the closet. The space was cramped, lined with shelves of folded blankets and little linen frocks. He left the door slightly ajar. Through the narrow crack, he could see a slice of the room. He heard the twins whisper to each other. "Do we sit?" Grace asked. "Yes," Oliver said. "We must be good. Papa said we must be brave." Time passed in slow drops. The air in the closet was warm, smelling of soap and wood. Thomas heard his own heartbeat, then the small shifting of the children as they sat. After a while, Grace whimpered. "I am hungry," she said. "My tummy feels empty." "Mine too," Oliver answered. Thomas pressed his hand against the door to keep from pushing it open. He did not know how long it had been since they last ate. He only knew it had been long enough that a stranger, a maid, had felt compelled to write him a desperate note. Footsteps sounded in the corridor. The nursery door opened. "What is this noise?" came Margaret's voice, cool and controlled. "I told you both to be quiet. Must I always repeat myself?" From the crack, Thomas saw her skirt first, then her figure as she crossed the room. Her face was composed, but there was a tightness around her mouth he had not seen before. "We are hungry," Grace whispered. "Hunger is sometimes useful," Margaret replied. "It teaches little ones not to be greedy. Your father indulges you. I shall not." Grace's shoulders trembled. From inside the closet, Thomas closed his eyes for a heartbeat, then opened them again, watching. At that exact moment, another set of footsteps approached the open nursery door, and Emily stepped over the threshold. Emily stopped just inside the doorway, the small jug of milk in her hand. She took in the scene at once, the twins on the floor, faces pale and anxious, Lady Margaret standing over them, back straight, expression cool, the untouched plates on the sideboard set neatly aside as if they did not matter. "I beg your pardon, my lady," Emily said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I was asked to bring milk for the children." Margaret turned, annoyance flashing in her eyes before she smoothed it away. "You were mistaken," she replied. "I gave no such order. The children are quite well." Oliver looked from Margaret to Emily. "We are hungry," he said. Grace nodded. "My tummy hurts." Margaret's jaw tightened. "You see what you have done," she said to Emily. "You encourage them to complain. It is most improper." Emily set the jug on the table with care. "With respect, my lady, they have not eaten since early morning. It is past 3 o'clock. They are not complaining. They are simply hungry." "That is none of your concern," Margaret answered. "You forget your place. The upbringing of these children is my duty now, not yours, not the servants'. Certainly not a maid who has been here scarcely a year." She turned back to the twins. "You will not say you are hungry again. It is a tiresome word. You will sit quietly until I am ready to have you downstairs." Grace's mouth wobbled. "But I am—" "That is enough," Margaret snapped, the sharpness breaking through. "You will be silent. Do you understand me?" The quiet in the room grew heavy. Oliver's face went rigid with effort as he tried not to cry. Something in Emily gave way. She stepped forward, heart pounding. "My lady," she said, "you must not speak to them so. They are only little." Margaret turned slowly. "You forget yourself, Miss Carter, is it?" "Yes, my lady. Emily Carter." She swallowed. "Forgive me, but I cannot stand by and listen. They are children. They have done nothing wrong." "They are ill-mannered and indulged," Margaret replied. "They have been allowed to rule this house since their birth. It is time they learned obedience. I will not have my authority questioned by staff. You will leave at once." Emily did not move. Her eyes went to the twins. Grace's shoulders were shaking now. Oliver had taken her hand and held it tightly, as if he could make her braver by sheer will. "My lady," Emily said again, voice low but firm, "if you wish to correct me later, you may, but I will not leave them frightened and hungry because it pleases you to hear silence." Margaret stared at her, astonished. "How dare you speak so to me?" she demanded. "You will regret this. I shall speak to Mrs. Harding, and you will be gone from this house by evening." She stepped closer, her skirts brushing the edge of the little table. Emily did something she had never done to any superior in all her years of service. She reached out and took hold of Margaret's forearm. It was not a rough grip, but it was firm enough to stop her. "My lady," she said quietly, "please, Do not say another word that will frighten them. You may dismiss me. You may have me turned away without a reference, but you must not make them believe they are a burden." Margaret's eyes widened in outraged disbelief. "Remove your hand at once." "I will," Emily replied, "when you step back from them." For a moment, everything froze. The future Duchess with anger flushing her cheeks, the maid with her hand on silk sleeve, the two small children clinging to each other on the floor. From the closet, Thomas watched, his own breath caught in his throat. "Unhand me," Margaret said. "You are forgetting not only your place, but your senses. I shall have you punished for this insolence. The Duke will hear of it." "I should like nothing better," Emily answered, "for then perhaps he will hear the rest as well." Margaret's lips parted. "The rest?" "The trays sent back untouched," Emily said. "The nurse dismissed. The hours they spend shut up in that small dark space, the way they flinch when they hear your step. He may wish to hear of that too." "You little fool," Margaret whispered. "You think anyone will take your word over mine? I am Lady Margaret Ashford. You are a nothing who wipes dust from chair legs." "I am someone who sees what is in front of her," Emily replied. "And I have already told His Grace." She had not meant to reveal it. The words burst out before she could stop them. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Told him? How?" "A letter," Emily said, her fingers tightening despite herself. "He may choose not to believe it, but I have done my part." "You impudent, interfering—" "Enough!" The single word stopped them both. Margaret stiffened. Emily released her arm at once and stepped back, her heart thudding so hard she thought she might be ill. Thomas stepped out of the closet into the light. Grace let out a small cry. "Papa!" Oliver scrambled to his feet. "We were brave," he said quickly. "We did not tell." Thomas's expression was unlike anything Emily had seen before. There was anger in it, yes, but also something colder, heavier. His gaze went first to his children, then to Margaret, then to Emily. "What is the meaning of this?" Margaret demanded, recovering herself with effort. "Thomas, what are you doing in that closet?" "This is most irregular." "I might ask you the same," he said. "I heard enough from there to require explanation." Margaret drew herself up. "You have been spying on me?" "I have been observing how my children are treated in my absence," he replied. "There is a difference." She flushed. "You cannot take seriously anything that girl has said. She is clearly unstable. Did you see how she laid her hands on me? She has no respect for rank. I shall insist that she be turned out at once." "Be silent, Margaret," he said. The quiet authority in his voice made her mouth close with an audible click. Thomas turned to Emily. "Miss Carter," he said, "you claimed you had already told me of these matters. By letter, I presume." "Yes, Your Grace," she answered, hands clasped before her to keep them from shaking. "I left it with Mr. Price this morning. I did not sign my name, for I feared—" "You feared consequences," he finished. "Understandable. You have them now, regardless." Her cheeks warmed. "Yes, Your Grace." Margaret gave a brittle laugh. "You see? She admits to sneaking anonymous accusations into your study. There is nothing more to discuss. Such behavior cannot be tolerated in any respectable house." He ignored her. "Miss Carter," he said, eyes still on Emily, "for how long have you observed what you described in your letter?" She hesitated, then decided there was nothing left to lose. "For several days, Your Grace," she said, "perhaps longer. At first I thought I must be mistaken. Trays do go astray, messages are misplaced, but I saw the pattern. When Your Grace is at table with Lady Margaret or away on estate business, meals for the children are delayed or turned back. The nurse is dismissed. The children are kept quiet by being shut into the linen closet." Oliver tugged at his father's sleeve. "We are not naughty all the time," he said in a small voice. "Sometimes we try to be very good." Grace added, "We whisper, so she will not say we are loud." Thomas's hand went to his son's shoulder. He turned his head toward Margaret. "Is this true?" he asked. She smiled, thin and controlled. "Thomas, you cannot be serious. You are taking the side of a servant and two little children who do not understand discipline over a woman who will soon be your wife." "I asked a question," he said. "And I answered," she replied. "No, it is not true as she presents it. The children are in need of firmer guidance. They have no mother. They have been overindulged. It is natural that they resist new rules. As for the meals, I merely wish to regulate the times. They are constantly being offered food. It is not healthy. Are they constantly being offered food? He asked quietly. Oliver, Grace? Oliver shook his head. Sometimes nurse brings plates, but Lady Margaret sends them away. Thomas's gaze did not leave Margaret's face. And the closet? Her composure wavered for the first time. I asked them to sit there once or twice when they shrieked and stamped their feet. It is not a prison, Thomas. You exaggerate. They were never there long, Grace whispered. It is dark. He drew a breath. You consider it proper to shut frightened children into a dark closet for discipline? You would rather they run wild, Margaret countered. You are blinded by your affection. Grief has made you weak where they are concerned. I was trying to help, to bring order. And starving them, he asked. Is that order? I have never starved anyone, she said. Do not use such words. I simply withheld a treat when they misbehaved. Any mother would do the same. This absurd maid has twisted the truth out of all proportion. Emily flinched. If I have exaggerated, Your Grace, she said softly, then I beg your pardon. I only know what I have seen. Yesterday the children had only a single biscuit between them in the afternoon. Today they had nothing until I brought the milk that Lady Margaret would not allow. Enough, Margaret said. I will not stand here and be slandered by someone who scrubs floors. She turned to Thomas once more, her gaze imploring. Send her down to the servants' hall and leave this to me. We shall laugh about it later. It is ridiculous. He did not laugh. Oliver, Grace, he said instead, still looking at Margaret. When did you last feel as you do now? Hungry and empty, as Grace said. Oliver frowned, thinking hard. Many times, he said at last. Whenever you go away to talk with the other grown-ups, Lady Margaret says it is our fault, that we should not ask. Grace pressed her face against his leg. I do not like when she smiles, she murmured. It does not feel kind. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. I heard you, Margaret, Thomas said finally. I heard you telling my children that hunger is useful, that you will not indulge them, that they disturb you. I heard you insist on silence when they tried to tell you they were in need. Those were your own words, not Miss Carter's. She paled. You twist everything. I repeat, he said. I cannot trust any woman who can speak in such a way to a hungry child, least of all mine. Margaret drew herself up in affronted dignity. Then what do you intend to do? Break our engagement over the complaints of a maid? I intend, he said, to protect my children. He turned to Emily. Miss Carter, please take Oliver and Grace to Nurse Ellen. Ask her to see they are properly fed and allowed to play in the schoolroom for the rest of the afternoon. Emily's heart raced. Yes, Your Grace. Papa, Grace whispered, clinging to his hand. Will you come too? I shall join you very soon, he said, bending to her. Go with Miss Carter for now. You are safe. She nodded slowly and allowed Emily to take her hand. Oliver followed, watching his father with searching eyes. Emily led them out, aware of Margaret's hostile stare on her back. In the corridor, Oliver looked up at her. Is Papa cross? He asked. He is concerned, she said. Sometimes grown-ups look cross when they are worried. Will he send Lady Margaret away? Grace asked, voice very small. Emily paused. I do not know, she admitted, but he heard you. That matters. She delivered them to Nurse Ellen, whose face changed from confusion to quiet outrage, as Emily, with careful words, explained that His Grace had requested the children be given a proper meal. Nurse Ellen nodded without questions. She sat the twins at the small table and began to cut thick slices of bread. Eat, little loves, she said. Whatever is happening, you will not go hungry while I breathe. Leaving them there was the hardest thing Emily had done in some time, but she knew she could not linger. She had been bold in the nursery. Too bold. Now she must face whatever that boldness would cost. Back upstairs, behind the closed door of the study, Thomas stood facing Margaret. She spoke first. This entire scene has been theatrical and absurd, she said, her hands clenched in front of her. You have allowed a servant to lay hands on me, to contradict me, to accuse me in front of the children. You have humiliated me. You humiliated yourself, he replied, when you treated my children as inconveniences to be managed rather than souls to be cherished. Oh, spare me your tender sentiments, she retorted. You barely spend time with them. They are raised by nurses and maids. I was trying to introduce some structure. A future duchess must command the nursery as well as the drawing room, but if you prefer chaos and indulgence, by all means continue as you are. You mistake vigilance for indulgence, he said. I have failed them by being absent. That much is true. I shall not fail them further by giving them a stepmother who uses hunger and fear as tools. She stared at him, disbelief giving way to a flash of alarm. Surely you do not mean— I mean, he said slowly, that this engagement cannot stand. You will not dare, she whispered. I will, he answered. I cannot marry a woman I cannot trust with my children. I will not. You owe my father everything, she said. His investments keep your estates from collapse. Without him, your precious Weatherford will crumble. He stiffened. I owe your father exactly what our agreements state, nothing more. There was never a condition that I must turn a blind eye to cruelty. This is not cruelty, she insisted. This is discipline. You throw the word around as if you knew what real cruelty is. You are blinded by grief and guilt over your poor dead wife. You cannot see what is best for these children. You are correct in one respect, he said. My grief is a great weight, but it has not blinded me to what I saw and heard with my own eyes and ears. Think, Thomas, she pressed, a note of desperation creeping in. Break this engagement and you destroy more than my reputation. You destroy your own. You invite scandal. You encourage gossip that you are unstable, that you are ruled by servants and childish whims. No one will invest in a man so erratic. So be it, he said quietly. I would rather endure scandal than raise my children under the rule of a woman who sees them as obstacles. You do not mean this, she said. So you are angry now, but you will regret— I have signed nothing I cannot lawfully withdraw from, he interrupted. The betrothal will be broken. I shall write to your father today. She stared at him, colour draining from her face. You are throwing away your salvation, she said, each word measured. Do you believe your title alone will protect you when creditors begin to whisper? When Parliament hears that the Duke of Weatherford jilted a lady over the word of a maid? I believe my conscience will allow me to sleep, he replied. She gave a short, harsh laugh. Then keep your conscience. You will need it when your lands are sold off piece by piece. I am sure it will comfort you. He did not answer. He walked to the door and opened it. Good day, Lady Margaret, he said. Mr. Price will see to your transport. You may remain here until tomorrow morning to make your arrangements. After that, I must insist you leave Weatherford Hall. She did not move at first. Then she passed him with a stiff little nod. At least, she said in the doorway, have the honesty to tell people the truth when they ask why you dismissed me. Tell them you chose a maid's tale over your own future. I shall tell them, he answered, that I chose my children. Their eyes met for a final moment. There was no softness in hers, only a glittering promise of retribution. You will regret this more than you can imagine, she said. She swept down the corridor, skirts whispering against the polished floor. Word spread through the house faster than any official announcement could have. By evening, every footman, maid and scullery girl knew that the engagement with Lady Margaret was broken and that she would be leaving. Whispers followed in her wake as trunks were packed and orders given in clipped tones. No one dared speak to her unless required, but they watched. In the servants' hall, Emily sat alone at the end of the table, her bowl of stew untouched. You look as if you have seen a ghost, one of the kitchen maids murmured. Leave her, another whispered back. She is the ghost. They say it was her word that sent Lady Margaret off. Emily pretended she did not hear. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap. She had not been summoned. She had not been praised or rebuked. That silence frightened her more than shouting would have. Mrs. Harding approached her as the others drifted away. Miss Carter, she said, her mouth set in a firm line. A word. Emily rose at once. Yes, Mrs. Harding. They stepped into the passage. You have placed this household in a difficult position, Mrs. Harding said. Lady Margaret was to be our mistress. Whatever has passed, she is still a lady. You contradicted her in front of the children. You laid hands on her. Emily dropped her gaze. I know, ma'am. The Duke may have acted on your information today, Mrs. Harding went on, but do not make the mistake of thinking you are safe. Gentlemen often change their minds when the first anger cools. They remember their interests. They forget who first stirred them. I understand, Emily said quietly. I am not saying you did wrong in speaking up for the children, the housekeeper added softer. I am saying that right and safe are not the same thing. I would not be surprised if we are instructed to find you a place elsewhere, once this storm has passed. If that is his Grace's wish, Emily replied, I will go. Mrs. Harding sighed. For what it is worth, those little ones are fond of you. That will count for something. Now go. You have duties. Emily curtsied and returned to her work, but her thoughts turned in circles. She had imagined dismissal even without a reference. She had not imagined something worse in its own way, staying long enough to see the children freed from one danger, only to be removed from their lives by another kind of necessity. That night, as darkness settled around the vast house, Margaret's carriage stood ready in the courtyard. Trunks were piled, servants waiting to close the doors. Thomas did not go down to see her off. He had written a letter to Lord Ashford and sent it ahead by fast rider. There was nothing more to say to Margaret herself. From an upstairs window, Oliver and Grace watched the carriage lamps glow. Is she going? Grace asked. Yes, Oliver said. Miss Emily said so. Will she come back? Grace murmured. Thomas stepped up behind them. No, he said. She will not. They turned at once and pressed themselves against him. Will we get another lady? Oliver asked. To be our mamma. The question struck him like a physical blow. Not for a long time, he said. Perhaps not ever. You have me. You have nurse. You have Miss Carter. That is enough for now. Grace nodded sleepily. I like Miss Carter, she said. So do I, Oliver added. He kissed their heads and sent them to bed, then returned to his study. He found no peace there. The letter to Lord Ashford lay on the desk, a copy made by his own hand for his records. It was polite, restrained, very clear. He cited differences of principle regarding the care of the children and expressed regret. He did not mention the closet. He did not mention hunger. There were some truths that would serve no purpose in being shared more widely than necessary. He sat behind his desk and stared at the ledgers. Even if Lord Ashford accepted the broken engagement with outward civility, the consequences were obvious. Investments withdrawn, promised funds withheld, partnerships quietly dissolved. In a world where reputation and credit were intertwined, a duke known to break his word could not expect easy terms from bankers. He had chosen. He would not unchoose. A knock sounded at the study door. Come in, he said. Mr. Price entered, his face unusually grave. Your Grace, Mr. Collins has arrived from London. He says the matter is urgent. So late? Thomas glanced at the clock. Send him in. Moments later, Mr. Collins, his solicitor, stepped into the room, shaking off his coat. My apologies for the hour, he said, but I thought you would prefer this not wait until morning. What has happened? Thomas asked. I have received a communication from Lord Ashford's lawyers, Mr. Collins said, opening his leather case. They have chosen to interpret your breaking of the engagement as a breach of conditions tied to the principal investment contract, and they state their intention to withdraw not only future funds, but to call in certain obligations at once. If they proceed as written, Your Grace, Weatherford may face a financial crisis from which it cannot recover. Thomas sat very still. Explain, he said. Mr. Collins placed a folded document on the desk. Lord Ashford's lawyers argue that the engagement was, in practice, part of the consideration for the investment. They call it mutual expectation of alliance. They claim that by breaking the betrothal, you have undermined the basis of trust on which the contract rests. That was never written, Thomas said. Our agreement concerned funds and percentages, not marriage vows. True, Collins replied, but they have worded it cleverly. They say that while the betrothal was not expressly stated, it formed an essential understanding. It is not entirely sound in law, but it can be made very uncomfortable in practice. How uncomfortable? Thomas asked. If they withdraw at once, Collins said, you will lose a substantial line of credit. You will have to repay certain notes within months instead of years. We can negotiate for time, but if they are determined to make an example of you, they can spread word among other investors that you are an unreliable partner. That will tighten every purse in London. Thomas rubbed his temples. In plain words, Collins. In plain words, the solicitor said, if they follow through, Your Grace, and if others follow their lead, you may be forced to sell land, cut staff, delay repairs, perhaps even part with some of the inherited pieces in town. Weatherford itself will not vanish, but it will not look as it does now. Will it keep food in my tenants' mouths? Thomas asked. Yes, Collins said slowly, if you choose wisely. But your own comfort, your position in society, your influence, those would suffer. Thomas sat back. I see. I am not here to tell you what to do with your children, Collins added, almost apologetically. I am here to tell you what your decision costs. Lord Ashford thinks I will crawl back, Thomas said. Collins hesitated. I suspect he believes that when you fully grasp the consequences, you may wish to mend the engagement. His letter ends with a line about hoping you will reconsider in light of your obligations to your house and your people. Does he mention his obligations to mine? Thomas asked. Any mention of his daughter's conduct? No, Your Grace, Collins replied. Only wounded dignity and legal threats. Thomas examined the document again, though the words blurred. He imagined Margaret's cool smile, her hand dismissing a tray, her voice telling his children that hunger was useful. Prepare an answer, he said at last. State that I regret any financial inconvenience, but that I will not reinstate the engagement. Ask for a reasonable schedule for repayment. We will sell what must be sold. Collins blinked. Your Grace, I must urge caution. There may be a way to delay, to soften. The longer I delay, Thomas said, the more time Lord Ashford has to whisper that I am seeking to wriggle out of my obligations. No, let him see that I understand the price and do not flinch. Collins gave a small, reluctant nod. Very well, I shall draft it tonight and bring it for your signature in the morning. Thank you, Thomas said. You have always served Weatherford faithfully. I will trust your judgment on the wording. But be clear, there will be no reconciliation. When Collins had gone, the house felt eerily quiet. In the distance, a clock struck the hour. Thomas leaned his elbows on the desk and let his head fall into his hands for a moment. You have chosen, he told himself. Do not look back. The days that followed did not allow him to forget the choice for a single hour. Within a week, polite letters arrived from 2 other investors, expressing concern over rumours of instability at Weatherford. An invitation to a parliamentary supper, once taken for granted, was regrettably postponed. A London newspaper printed a small, sly piece about a northern duke who dismissed his bride-to-be in a fit of domestic sentimentality, hinting that financial institutions might wish to take heed. Lady Agatha marched into his study, newspaper in hand. Domestic sentimentality, she cried. They mean you. Everyone knows they mean you. Do you see what your impulsiveness has done? Thomas took the paper, skimmed the paragraph and set it down. I see a writer who cannot name his subject, and therefore wields his pen behind a veil, he said. I have endured worse. You have not endured the ton laughing at you behind their fans, she said, and they will. They will say you cast off a suitable bride because a pretty maid whimpered about the children's supper. His gaze sharpened. Is that what they say? Oh, they do not say it to me, Lady Agatha replied. I am your aunt, they are polite, but I hear enough. Lord Ashford's circle is very busy telling everyone that Margaret is the injured party. Do they mention closets? He asked. Do they mention plates sent away and tears in the dark? No, of course not, she said impatiently. Do not be naive. They speak of a young lady devoted to her future stepchildren, suddenly thrown aside by a duke who cannot control his staff. Then, Thomas said, we must bear it. She stared at him. That is all you have to say. For now, he answered. Unless you would have me lie. I would have you save this house, she said. Your father did not toil all his life so that you might throw Weatherford into the fire to prove a point about bread and biscuits. My father taught me that Weatherford stands for something, he replied. If it stands only for profit at the expense of the powerless, it is not worth saving. Lady Agatha pressed her lips together. And what of the maid? The one whose letter began all this. Will you keep her here as a reminder? He knew what she was truly asking. Her name is Emily Carter, he said. And yes, I will not punish her for telling me the truth. His aunt exhaled sharply. You may not intend to punish her, but she will suffer all the same. Do you not see how they speak of her already? They say she has your favor. They say she bewitched you, fed you stories until you threw away a good match. It is wicked nonsense, but people adore wicked nonsense. Then they have poor taste, he said dryly. This is not a jest, she insisted. If you are not careful, Thomas, they will make it impossible for that girl to walk through a room without whispers. They will ruin her name. If you truly care for her welfare, You will find her a place in another house, somewhere far from this scandal." He looked away, out the window, where the grounds stretched green and familiar. "You ask me to send away the woman who stood between my children and fear," he said. "I will not do it." "You will if you think clearly," Lady Agatha answered. "You cannot marry her. You must not even appear to show her special regard. The kindest thing would be to give her a generous reference and see her settled under a mistress whose household is quieter than this." He did not answer at once. "I will consider what is kind," he said finally, "but I will not act out of fear of gossip. Not again." Lady Agatha's eyes searched his face. "You are more your mother's son than your father's," she said softly. "She always favored heart over calculation." "I count that as no insult," he replied. She shook her head. "It may comfort you. It does not comfort your creditors." When she had gone, the silence returned heavier than before. In that silence, on another floor, Emily moved through the nursery with quiet efficiency, trying not to hear her own name spoken in whispers. "Did you hear?" one of the lower maids had said that morning. "They say the Duke broke with Lady Margaret because of Miss Carter." "Nonsense," another replied. "Why would a duke listen to a maid?" "Because she told him something he did not like," the first said, "or because he likes hearing her speak. You know how these stories go." Emily had turned away before they could see the colour rising in her cheeks. Now she knelt by the toy chest while Oliver and Grace scattered wooden soldiers and rag dolls across the carpet. "Do they still talk about Lady Margaret?" Oliver asked suddenly. Children always heard more than adults wished. "Some do," Emily said, folding a little jacket. "But talk is only talk. It cannot touch you." "Will she come back?" Grace asked, placing her doll carefully in a row. "No," Emily said gently. "Your father has sent her away for good." "Because she put us in the closet?" Oliver asked. "Because he heard you were unhappy," she answered. "And because he saw for himself." Grace sat back. "I still do not like the closet," she said. "But when we were there, I pretended I was in a little boat and the dark was the sea. Oliver said he would row." Oliver nodded vigorously. "I did." Emily smiled despite herself. "Then you were very brave sailors. Would you come in the boat with us?" Grace asked. "No," Oliver said quickly. "Miss Carter should not be in the dark. She must stay by the light." Emily looked at him, startled by the earnestness in his face. "I hope," she said, "that there will be no more dark boats for either of you." They played for a while, building a fort from cushions. When the game grew noisy, Emily glanced toward the door, a reflex born of recent days. No one came to shush them. No one knocked to demand silence. The house was tense, but the nursery, for the moment, was a little island of laughter. Later, as she helped Nurse Ellen settle the twins for their rest, the nurse shook her head. "I never liked that lady's eyes," she murmured. "Too cool by half when she looked at them. I blame myself for not seeing sooner." "If Miss Carter had not spoken—" Emily flushed. "I only did what anyone would have done," she said. "Do not lie so boldly," Nurse Ellen replied, though her tone was kind. "I have worked in houses where plenty saw, and no one spoke." "You are a rare one, Emily." "Rare trouble, perhaps," Emily said under her breath. The nurse hesitated. "Have you heard what they are saying?" "I hear enough," Emily admitted. "They say you turned his head," Nurse Ellen said. "They say you are the reason he broke with Lady Margaret." Emily's hands stilled on Grace's blanket. "That is not true," she said quickly. "His Grace made his own choice. I only told him what was happening. I never asked him to take any particular step." "I know," Nurse Ellen said. "But the world does not care what we know. It likes a story with a villain and a temptress. Just be cautious, child. The higher folk look for someone to blame when things go wrong. It is seldom one of their own." "I have been cautious all my life," Emily said softly. It did not help much. She left the nursery with a weight pressing on her chest that had nothing to do with trays or blankets. At supper in the servants' hall, the mood was strained. Some avoided her entirely. Others stared with undisguised curiosity. A footman leaned over from the next bench, voice low. "Is it true, White?" he asked. "Did you write to His Grace behind Lady Margaret's back?" Emily looked at him. "I wrote to His Grace about the children," she said. "Their welfare is his concern." "And now Lady Margaret is gone," he said, "and Lord Ashford is in a fury. I heard Mr. Price say so. No one says it outright, but we all know who lit the match. Do you think I should have kept silent?" she asked. He shifted. "I think I am glad it was not my hand," he muttered, and went back to his stew. Later that evening, word reached her that Mr. Collins had left. The house settled into uneasy quiet. The next day, Lady Agatha summoned the housekeeper. Emily did not see their conversation, but she felt its echoes. Mrs. Harding called her to the housekeeper's room after noon. "Sit down, Miss Carter," Mrs. Harding said, folding her hands on the desk. "There is a matter we must discuss." Emily obeyed, perching on the edge of the chair as if it might vanish. "You are aware," Mrs. Harding began, "that His Grace's decision regarding Lady Margaret has caused difficulties." "Yes, ma'am," Emily said. "I am sorry for any trouble." "Sorry does not untangle accounts or silence gossip," the housekeeper replied, though not unkindly. "I have spoken with Lady Agatha. She is very concerned that people in town and beyond will connect your name with this scandal." Emily's mouth felt dry. "I have done nothing wrong, ma'am." "In the eyes of heaven, perhaps not," Mrs. Harding said. "In the eyes of society, you are a maid who helped overturn an engagement. That is enough." Emily stared at her hands. "If it would help the house, I can keep to the upper floors. I need not be seen." Mrs. Harding shook her head. "The problem is not where you walk. The problem is what they imagine in their minds. Lady Agatha believes, rightly I fear, that as long as you remain here, certain tongues will insist you hold some special sway with His Grace." "I do not," Emily said quickly. "I spoke to him twice today only to ask about the children's diet." "I know," Mrs. Harding said, "but the world prefers stories to facts. Lady Agatha has suggested, and I must admit I see the sense in it, that it might be better for you to seek a position elsewhere." The words fell like stones. "I am to be dismissed," Emily said, keeping her voice as steady as she could. "We would not call it dismissal," the housekeeper said. "You have served well. You would receive an excellent reference. There is a cousin of Lady Agatha's in Bath, who maintains a respectable household. She often requires reliable upper maids. I would write to her on your behalf." "And the children?" Emily asked before she could stop herself. "They have only just begun to feel safe." Mrs. Harding's expression softened. "They will be cared for. Nurse Ellen is devoted. His Grace has taken a closer interest. They are not without defenders." Emily swallowed hard. "Has His Grace asked for this?" Mrs. Harding hesitated. "Lady Agatha believes he will see the wisdom of it when presented with the facts. Sometimes gentlemen must be guided to what is best, especially when they are under strain. She intends to speak to him this evening." "So he has not yet agreed," Emily said quietly. "Do not cling to false hope," Mrs. Harding replied. "You know as well as I that when the family decides something is necessary, the servants must adjust. This is not punishment, Emily. It is precaution." "It feels very much like punishment," Emily murmured. "You will have time," the housekeeper said, ignoring the remark. "A week, perhaps 2, while letters are exchanged. In the meantime, continue as usual. Do not speak of this to anyone. I would not have the household in turmoil." "Yes, ma'am," Emily said. She left the room with her head high until she reached the back stair. There, where no one could see, she sat down on the step and pressed her hand to her mouth. Bath. Another house. Strange faces. New children, perhaps, or none. Another life begun from the beginning because she had dared to love 2 small souls too much. In the days that followed, nothing outward changed. The bell rang as always. Trays went up and down. The twins laughed more easily. Thomas paced his study with Collins's letters in hand, but underneath it all, the decision seemed to gather itself like a storm. One evening she passed the open door of the drawing-room and heard Lady Agatha's voice. "You must think of the family, Thomas. You must think of appearances." "There are more important things than appearances," he replied. "Not in London," she said. "Not when men like Lord Ashford hold your reputation in their ink-stained fingers. I am not asking you to turn cruel. I am asking you to be wise. Find the girl a place where she will not be torn to pieces by malice. It is for her own good." Emily hurried away before she could hear more. That night, alone in her small room, she took out her one suitcase and set it on the bed. It was scuffed at the corners, a relic from the place she had served before coming to Weatherford. She opened it and stared at the neat stack of folded linen inside. "I will not cry," she told herself. "I chose this, I wrote the letter. I knew there would be a cost." She placed her spare dress inside, then her shawl, then the little book of hymns her mother had given her before she died. Her hands shook only once, when she picked up the small cotton handkerchief Grace had unthinkingly stuffed into her apron pocket 2 weeks earlier. She had washed it and kept it, meaning to return it, and always forgetting. She pressed it briefly to her cheek, then laid it atop the folded clothes. A soft knock sounded at her door. She froze. Mrs. Harding, perhaps, come to tell her the arrangements were settled. Or another maid, eager for gossip. Her heart gave a strange, painful leap. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve, smoothed her hair, and crossed the narrow space. For a moment her hand rested on the latch, steadying itself. Then she drew a breath, turned it, and opened the door. Thomas stood in the doorway. He had no coat on, only his shirt sleeves and waistcoat, as if he had left his study in some haste. For a moment they simply looked at one another, both surprised, both searching the other's face for a clue. "Your Grace," Emily said quickly, stepping back. "Forgive me, you thought it might be Mrs. Harding," he finished quietly. "Or Lady Agatha, someone come to tell you your fate." She lowered her eyes. "I did not presume to think your Grace would visit the servants' floor." "I do so too rarely," he said. "May I come in?" She startled at the question. "Of course, your Grace." He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The little room seemed to shrink around them. His gaze went at once to the open suitcase on the bed, the folded dress, the neatly placed shawl. "So," he said, "it is true." Emily clasped her hands to keep from grabbing the case and shoving it out of sight. "Mrs. Harding spoke to me," she said. "She explained that my presence causes difficulty. I do not blame her, I understand." "What do you understand?" he asked. "That people talk," she said. "That Lady Agatha is worried for the family's name. That some think I have had undue influence in your decisions. That as long as I remain here, the gossip will not cease. It is better if I remove the cause of it." "This is how they described you?" he asked. "As a cause to be removed?" "They did not say it so plainly," she replied, trying to smile, "but that is the sense." He took a step closer, then stopped, as if remembering where he was. "And you were packing to go?" he asked. "Yes, Your Grace," she said. "Mrs. Harding believes she may find me a place in Bath. It is a respectable house, she says. I will be grateful for any recommendation she gives." "And you would simply go," he said, "without a word to me." "What word could I offer?" she asked quietly. "It is not my place to argue my value to this house. You have burdens enough without listening to the begging of a maid. I wrote you once. That was already too bold. I will not trouble you again." He looked at the suitcase, then at her face. "You trouble me by leaving," he said. She blinked. "Your Grace, do you believe," he asked slowly, "that I am so weak a man I must be protected from the very person who saved my children?" "That is not it," she said quickly. "They fear for you, not of you. They think if I stay, the tales will grow worse. They say people already believe that I hold some special place in your thoughts." "Do you?" he asked before he could stop himself. She flushed. "Your Grace, I would never presume." "I do not ask what you presume," he interrupted gently. "I ask what is true for you." She stared at him, mouth slightly parted, words tangled. "I care for the children," she managed, "more than is wise. I am fond of Nurse, and even of Mrs. Harding's scoldings. I respect you, Your Grace. I am grateful you believed my letter. Beyond that, my thoughts are my own. And if your thoughts did concern me more than is proper," he asked, "would you tell me?" She shook her head at once. "No, that would be the worst impropriety of all." He took a breath, as if steadying himself. "Miss Carter, Emily, what you did in that nursery, and before it, was an act of courage few in this house would have dared. You risked your livelihood to protect my children. That is not something I forget." "I did not do it to be remembered," she said. "I did it because I could not sleep at night if I did not." "Just so," he said. "And now they reward you by sending you away." "It may be a kindness," she said, though the word tasted bitter. "Perhaps in Bath no one will know my name. I can be only a maid again." "And Oliver? And Grace?" he asked. "Will they simply forget the maid who taught them to trust again? Shall I explain to them that Miss Carter was removed for the sake of appearances?" "You need say nothing," she replied. "Children forget quickly. New routines, new faces, they will adapt. You believe that? He asked. She hesitated. I hope it for their sake. If they cling to what is lost, it only hurts them. He studied her for a long moment. Emily, he said, do you wish to go? She opened her mouth, closed it, then forced herself to answer honestly. No, Your Grace, she whispered, I do not. He exhaled, as if some knot inside him had loosened. Then you shall not, he said. She looked up sharply. It is not so simple. Lady Agatha is my aunt, not my sovereign, he said. Mrs. Harding is my employee, not my commander. This house bears my name. The decision is mine. They speak of scandal, she said, of your reputation. If I stay, they will go on saying you dismissed Lady Margaret for my sake. They are wrong, he said. I dismissed Lady Margaret for my children's sake. If the truth is too dull for them, let them invent prettier lies. I will not build my household on those lies. She swallowed. You do not fear what they say about me? I fear, he said slowly, that their words will wound you. I do not fear their judgment of me. That is very noble, Your Grace, she said. But noble thoughts do not mend accounts or open doors in town. No, he agreed, they do not. But neither does cowardice mend a man's soul. He moved to the single chair beneath the small window and sat, as if trying to seem less imposing. Come, he said quietly. Sit. We must speak plainly, you and I. She obeyed, perching again on the edge of the bed, her hands twisting in her lap. I have spent weeks, he began, trying to balance ledgers that do not wish to be balanced. Lord Ashford has chosen to weaponize our broken engagement. My name in certain circles is not what it was. That is all true. I am sorry, she said. I did not mean to bring such trouble. I only meant to— You meant to feed hungry children and bring them into the light, he said. If trouble follows that, the fault is not yours. She lowered her eyes. Still, I am the easiest thing to move. Send me away and at least one piece of the gossip dies. Does it? He asked. If I send you away, they will say it is an admission of guilt. They will say I kept you until I had no further use for you. They will not think of your feelings. They will only twist the story to amuse themselves. Perhaps, she admitted, but you would be less exposed. That matters more. It does not, he said simply. Not to me. The room was quiet for a moment. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. When I hid in that closet, he said, I expected to find either that the letter was false or that Margaret's temper was merely sharper than I had noticed. I did not expect to see a maid lay her hand on a lady's arm and risk everything to stop cruel words from falling on small heads. Emily flushed. I should not have touched her, she said. It was wrong. It was necessary, he replied. You did what I did not. You were present, you acted. I was hiding in the dark, waiting. You were listening, she said. That matters. Not as much as what you did, he said. He fell silent again, searching for words. She watched him, uneasy. Why have you come, Your Grace? She asked at last. Truly, because I heard from Mrs. Harding that Lady Agatha intends to solve this situation by sending you away, he said. Because I could not allow you to pack your life into that little case without at least hearing from your own lips whether you wish to go. Because— He stopped. Because what? She asked, barely above a whisper. He lifted his gaze to hers. Because when I imagined this house without you in it, he said, it felt empty in a way I cannot accept. Her breath caught. Your Grace, you must not say such things. Why not? He asked gently. Because I am your servant, she said. Because people already say I have turned your head. Because it is dangerous. Dangerous to whom? He asked. To you? To me? To the version of me that sits comfortably in London clubs while my heart withers here? You have responsibilities, she said, clinging to the argument. To your tenants, to your name, to your position in Parliament. You must think of alliances, of wealth, of what your children will inherit. A man like you does not, cannot, tie himself to someone like me. He regarded her steadily. A man like me married a shy girl with no fortune 12 years ago because he loved her. The world muttered then as well. My father was furious. Yet that marriage gave me 3 years of happiness and 2 children. Do you suggest I regret it? She blinked. I did not know. People speak only of your late Duchess with reverence, as if she had always belonged here. She belonged because I brought her here and refused to be moved, he said. The world adjusted. It always does eventually when it meets a will firm enough. Emily shook her head. This is different. You have already angered Lord Ashford. You need a wife who will mend that, who brings money, influence, a name, not a maid who owns 2 dresses and a hymn book. I need, he said, a wife who will stand in front of my children when harm approaches, who will speak truth even when it costs her dearly, who will look me in the eye and refuse to flatter my weaknesses. Tell me, Emily, where shall I find such a woman if not here? She swallowed hard. You must not say that to me. It is not kind. It is the only kindness I know, he said. Her hands twisted tighter. Even if you cared for me in that way, which I do not ask you to, what of the world? They will tear you to pieces. They will say you have lost your senses. They will mock your children. They will call me names I do not care to repeat. How can I allow that? How can you prevent it? He asked gently. By removing yourself? By letting them drive you from the one place where your goodness has borne fruit? No, that is not justice. Life is not just, she said. You know that, Your Grace. You lost your wife. Good men lose their farms to bad harvests. Children go hungry even when their fathers work. Justice is not part of the bargain. Perhaps not, he said, but I can decide whether I lend my hand to injustice. Sending you away because others lie about you would be exactly that. You're not responsible for me, she said. You have done enough by believing me. He rose slowly and took one step closer, stopping within arm's reach. Emily, he said, his voice low, I am responsible for what kind of man I become. That includes how I treat the woman my children now love, almost as much as they love me. She drew a shaky breath. They will love whoever is kind to them. They will not, he said. They are no longer so trusting. They learned too much too early. They chose you, that matters. Her eyes grew bright. She looked away, blinking. You are making this very hard, she whispered. Good, he said, because what I'm about to ask ought to be hard, for both of us. She stilled. Ask? Yes, he said. I have asked you to risk your employment to protect my children. I have asked you to stay when others would send you away. Now I must ask something larger. He drew a breath as if stepping over an invisible line. Emily Carter, he said, if I were not your master, if I were only a man with 2 frightened children and a heart much in your debt, would you consider becoming my wife? Silence wrapped around the question. She stared at him, all color draining from her face. For a moment she seemed not to understand the words. She broke off, shook her head as if to scatter the thought. You cannot mean that. I do, he said, with all the seriousness of which I am capable. You barely know me, she protested. You know how I scrub stairs and soothe crying children. You know I write letters more plainly than most ladies. You do not know my temper, my faults, my foolishness. You cannot offer me such a thing. I know enough, he said. I know your temper is strong where it matters and quiet where it should be. I know your faults, if any, have not prevented you from doing what countless others would not. As for foolishness, if you possess it, it is likely no worse than my own. It is madness, she said. Perhaps, he said, but it is honest madness. I would rather be mad in truth than sane in pretense. What of your aunt? She asked weakly. What of Mrs. Harding? What of the ton? They will object, he said. They will mutter. Then they will adapt. Or they will stay away. I can live without half the invitations that currently fill my desk. I cannot live, or do not wish to, in a house from which your presence has been banished. She pressed a hand to her forehead. You put too much weight on me. I am no duchess. I do not know how to manage a great house. I will make mistakes. People will laugh. Then we will learn together, he said. You already manage the only part of this house that matters most to me, the nursery. The rest is carpets and menus. She gave a choked laugh, half sob. I think Mrs. Harding would disagree with that. She will adjust, he said, a faint smile touching his mouth. She likes order. Give her a few months and she will be criticizing your table arrangements instead of your origins. That is progress of a kind. You speak as if it is all so easy, she said. He grew serious again. No, it will not be easy. Lord Ashford will do what he can to make our lives difficult. Certain doors will close. Certain men will turn their backs. We may have to sell land, perhaps live more simply than other dukes. You may find yourself snubbed at first, gossiped about, misnamed. And yet you still ask? She whispered. I ask, he said, because when all that is finished, I see something else. I see my children running to you in a hall that echoes with laughter instead of silence. I see you sitting where Margaret never truly sat, in the center of this home, not as its ornament, but as its heart. I see myself older, perhaps with less wealth, but with something wealth cannot buy, a house that is honest. She closed her eyes. You paint it too clearly. It is almost cruel. I will stop, he said, if you tell me your heart is not engaged. If you tell me you feel nothing but gratitude. She opened her eyes slowly. You know I cannot say that. Then what can you say? He asked. She looked at him, truly looked, seeing not his Grace the Duke, but the man who had knelt to take his children from a dark closet, who had faced down a future duchess for their sake, who now stood in a cramped little room, asking a maid to change the course of his life. I can say, she began, voice trembling, that when I first came here, I pitied the children and respected you from a distance. I never imagined you as anything but my master. Then I saw your grief, when you thought no one watched. I saw how gentle you were with Oliver and Grace when you had time to be. I saw how quickly you believed me, when you might have dismissed me. I tried not to feel anything beyond respect and duty, but— She hesitated, then forced the words out. But I find that when you enter a room, I know it before I hear your voice. When you look tired, I wish there was something I could do to ease it. When the children speak of you, my heart warms. If that is not the beginning of love, then I do not know what else to call it. He took a slow, careful step closer. Emily, he said softly. She lifted a hand, stopping him at arm's length. But knowing that, she went on, does not answer the other questions. You are a duke. I am the daughter of a village schoolmaster with no dowry, no connections, no training for the life you speak of. If I say yes, I do not only risk myself, I risk your name, your children's standing. I fear that more than I fear any gossip about me. He regarded her with something like awe. You think first of my children even now, he said. How could I choose any other woman? She shook her head. You twist my words to suit your heart. I listen to them, he said. That is all. He drew a breath, then let it out slowly. Emily Carter, he said again, more quietly. I ask you not as a duke who has weighed advantages, but as a man who has lived 3 years in a house half alive. Will you marry me? Will you be mother to Oliver and Grace and partner to whatever future remains to Weatherford? Rich or poor? Tears spilled over at last. You must give me time, she whispered. A little time. I do not doubt my heart. I doubt the world. I will give you as much time as you need, he said. But know this. Whatever the world does, my resolve will not change. I will not marry for convenience again. If you refuse me, I shall remain as I am. That is a terrible thing to say, she protested through tears. It makes me feel as if I hold your fate in my hands. You hold a part of it, he said. You earned that right when you took my children's fate into your hands without permission. She laughed again, helplessly, wiping her cheeks. You are impossible, Your Grace. Thomas, he said. She blinked. What? When you consider, he said, consider marrying Thomas. The Duke will follow where he must. Her gaze softened. Thomas? She repeated, the name strange and intimate on her tongue. They stood like that for a long moment, the suitcase open between them, the candle burning low on the small table. At last, she drew a breath. Very well, she said. I will think on it. But I warn you, my answer will not be guided by what makes life easier. I seem to have lost the knack for that. Good, he said gently. Nor have I any use for easy answers. He reached for her hand then, slowly enough that she could pull away if she wished. She did not. His fingers closed around hers, warm and sure. No more packing, he said. Put the case away. At least until you decide you truly wish to leave. She nodded, unable to speak. He lifted her hand as if to kiss it, then stopped, perhaps remembering the gulf that still lay between them. Instead, he pressed it briefly between both of his, then let go. I must go before half the household comes searching for me, he said. If anyone asks, I was inspecting the upper corridor for drafts. That is not believable, she said faintly. No, he agreed. But let them wonder. He moved to the door, then paused with his hand on the latch. Emily, he said without turning. Whatever answer you give, know this. You will not be sent away to spare my pride. I will face what comes with you here or without you, but not at the cost of your forced banishment. She found her voice. Thank you, she said. For that, if for nothing else. For many things else, he replied, and left. Days passed. Not many, but long. He did not speak to her again about marriage. He spoke to her about the children, their lessons, their meals, Grace's fear of thunderstorms, Oliver's new fascination with maps. He joined them in the nursery more often, sitting on the floor in his shirt sleeves, letting wooden soldiers fall in untidy ranks. The house buzzed with rumor. Some claimed the maid was on the verge of dismissal. Others were certain she was staying by special order. No one quite dared ask her. She went about her duties quietly, her heart in a constant, unfamiliar motion between hope and fear. One evening, she found him in the nursery after the twins had fallen asleep. He stood by the window, looking out at the fading light. She hesitated in the doorway. "You're Thomas," she said softly. He turned at the name and something in his face eased. "Are they settled?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "They insisted on saying their prayers twice, once for you, once for the house." He smiled. "We need all we can get." She stepped inside and closed the door most of the way. "I have been thinking," she began. "So have I," he said. "I know," she said. "I could see it in your face every time you tried to explain chess to Oliver." He huffed a little laugh. "I had no idea I was so transparent." "You are to me," she said. "Perhaps because I watched too closely." "You may continue," he said. "What has your thinking led you to?" She looked down at the sleeping children, their cheeks flushed, their small hands relaxed at last. "If I say yes," she said quietly, "they will gain a mother and lose a measure of peace. For a time, at least. Our lives will be examined, judged, spoken of by people who know nothing of us." "Yes," he acknowledged. "If I say no," she went on, "they will keep their duke and their nursery maid and their quiet routine. You will be free to seek a more suitable bride, one who brings money and allies. They may even grow to love her in time." "Perhaps," he said. She looked up. "Which of those futures do you truly want for them? If you could strip away pride and romance and all the wildness of heart, what would you choose as their father?" He answered without hesitation. "I would choose," he said, "the future in which they are loved by someone who has already proved she will suffer for their sake." Her eyes filled again. "You make it very difficult to be cautious." "Good," he said simply. She drew a long breath, as if stepping out onto ice. "Then I have my answer," she said. "If you still wish it, I will marry you, Thomas." For a moment he did not move. Then all the tightness left his shoulders at once. "Are you certain?" he asked. "No," she said honestly, "but I am brave enough to try." He laughed softly. The sound hushed for the children's sake. "That is all I ask," he said. "Bravery, not certainty." He crossed the room to her, stopping close, but not crowding her. "May I?" he began, then glanced at the cradles. "This seems a strange place for a declaration." "It is the only place it could be," she answered. "They are the reason we stand here at all." "Very well," he said. He took her hands in his and lifted them to his chest. "Emily Carter," he said, his voice low but clear, "you honor me more than you know. I will do my best to be a husband worthy of the courage you have shown." "And I," she replied, "will do my best to be a wife who does not let fear rule her." He smiled a little unsteady. "May I kiss you?" he asked. She glanced at the sleeping children, then back at him, her cheeks warm. "Once," she said, softly, so as not to wake them. He leaned down and brushed his lips against her forehead. Nothing more. It was a brief, reverent touch, but it seemed to settle something deep inside them both. When he drew back, his eyes were bright. "We will speak to my aunt tomorrow," he said, "and to Mrs. Harding. There will be protests. I will answer them. You need not. I will stand beside you," she said. "Even if I say nothing." "That will be enough," he replied. They stood together for a little while longer, watching Oliver and Grace sleep, two small forms breathing steadily in the soft light. Outside, the wind pressed against the nursery windows, but inside, for the first time in years, the house felt truly at peace. Lady Agatha did not sit down when she entered the morning room. She stood in the center of the carpet, like someone about to pronounce sentence. Thomas sat by the window. Emily stood near the door, hands clasped, wishing her heart would beat a little more quietly. "I have heard something extremely disturbing," Lady Agatha said. "Kindly tell me it is a misunderstanding." Thomas looked up. "That depends on what you heard." "That you intend to marry this girl," his aunt said, pointing one gloved finger in Emily's direction, as if she were an unexpected stain on the wallpaper. "Your maid. Her name is Emily Carter," he said evenly. "And yes, I intend to marry her." Lady Agatha stared, then let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You cannot be serious." "I am," he replied. "This is not a jest, aunt," he added, seeing her expression harden. "It is my settled intention." Lady Agatha turned her gaze on Emily, examining her from head to toe. "You encouraged this?" she asked. Emily flushed. "No, my lady. His Grace made the offer without any prompting from me. I did not expect it. I was frightened by it." "But you accepted," Lady Agatha said sharply. "Yes," Emily answered quietly, "after much thought. I did not accept lightly." "You are a maid," Lady Agatha said. "You dust tables and carry trays. You have no fortune, no family worth naming in the peerage, no understanding of what it means to run a great house. And you think you can be a duchess." "I think," Emily said, eyes steady now, "that I can love his children and his home with all my strength. The rest I will learn." Lady Agatha turned back to Thomas. "You see, she does not even deny it. She admits she is entirely unqualified." "Motherhood and honesty are qualifications I value highly," Thomas said. "Do not mock me," his aunt snapped. "You will ruin yourself. The ton will never receive her. Your seat in society is less important than my seat at this table," he said. "With my family." Lady Agatha pressed her lips together. "You speak like a poet, not like a duke responsible for estates and tenants. What of Lord Ashford? Have you thought what new ammunition you hand him? Not only did the Duke of Weatherford cast off my daughter, he chose a servant in her place. He will shout it from every rooftop." "He already shouts," Thomas said calmly. "Let him exhaust himself. My decision does not change because he chooses to bang on more doors." "He will crush you," she said. "He will call in every debt, whisper in every bank. You are already in a precarious position. And now this." Emily stood very still, every word landing like a stone. "I will not pretend the price is small," Thomas answered, "but I will not cheapen my children's salvation by marrying a woman who terrified them simply to mend accounts. Nor will I hide the woman who saved them as if she were something shameful." Lady Agatha's gaze flicked toward Emily again, softer for a second. "You have courage, girl," she said. "I will grant you that. But courage does not make you a duchess. Neither does a title alone," Thomas replied. His aunt let out a long breath and sank at last into a chair. "You truly love her?" she asked quietly. "Yes," he said simply. "And you truly believe she will be a good mother to Oliver and Grace?" she pressed. "Yes," he said again, with more feeling. Lady Agatha's shoulders dropped. "Then I suppose my opinion matters very little." "It matters," he said gently. "You are part of this family. I would rather you stand with us." She studied him for a long moment, then turned to Emily. "You understand," she said slowly, "that once you marry him, you will be judged for every small misstep. They will say horrible things about your past, your motives, your intelligence. They will look for faults in your speech, your clothing, your smallest gesture." "I understand," Emily said. "I am frightened of it, but I have been frightened before. It did not stop me then." Lady Agatha's mouth twitched. "No, it did not." She shifted her attention back to Thomas. "Very well," she said at last. "You will marry her no matter what I say. I see it in your face. I do not approve. I think it reckless and unwise. But I also remember your mother, and how she walked into this house with nothing but a modest dowry and made it warmer by sheer force of kindness." She turned to Emily again. "If you fail these children," she said, "I will never forgive you." Emily met her eyes. "Nor would I forgive myself, my lady." Lady Agatha nodded once. "Then we understand each other. I shall have to coach you, I suppose. Someone must ensure you do not call a marquis sir and a bishop my lord. Heaven help us." A tiny, stunned laugh escaped Emily. "I will take any help you offer," she said. Lady Agatha sniffed. "Do not think I do this for you. I do it for the children and for the name on the door." "I know," Emily said softly. Thomas rose. "Thank you, Aunt," he said. "You do more than you know." Do not thank me yet, she said briskly. We have not faced the worst of it. Lord Ashford has not even begun. She was right. Within days, a formal letter arrived from Lord Ashford himself, written in an elegant, angry hand. Is it true, he wrote, that you intend to ally your ancient name to a common servant? If so, you prove beyond doubt that my daughter has had a narrow escape. Nevertheless, I cannot allow your insult to stand unchallenged. I invite you to meet my representatives to discuss restitution and the adjustment of our financial affairs. Do not imagine you can flout both honor and prudence without consequence. Mr. Collins laid the letter before Thomas and Emily in the study. Emily had not expected to be included, but Thomas waved her to a chair. This concerns you as much as me, he said. You should hear it. Mr. Collins cleared his throat. They request a meeting in London, at Lord Ashford's club. I expect tempers will be high. You need not bring Miss Carter into such a viper's nest. I had not planned to, Thomas said calmly. Emily, you will remain here with the children. I will not expose you to their malice. I never thought you would, she said, though the thought of him facing that hostile room alone made her stomach twist. They discussed dates. They discussed possible outcomes. Collins advised caution. They have influence, he said, but you have something they lack, a reputation until now for integrity. You must lean on that. Do not allow them to twist this into a story of madness. Tell the truth as far as decency allows. How much truth? Thomas asked. I would not speak of closets, Collins said. You risk being painted as hysterical. But you may speak of grave differences in principle regarding the treatment of your children, and let that phrase hang where it will. And if they insist on painting Miss Carter as a temptress? Thomas asked. Collins glanced uneasily at Emily. They likely will. It is a convenient tale. You must not allow them to see that it angers you. That is what they want. Emily sat very straight. If they must call someone names, she said, let it be me. Better that than the children suffer again. Thomas looked at her. You are not theirs to throw stones at, he said. In words I am, she said quietly. But words do not break bones. I can endure them. He shook his head. I do not wish you to endure anything. I wish... He stopped himself. Mr. Collins was still present, though he pretended to be absorbed in his notes. You wish the world were kinder? Emily finished gently. So do I. But we have the world we have. The meeting in London took place 2 weeks later. Emily watched Thomas and Mr. Collins ride away in the carriage at dawn, the mist curling around the wheels. Oliver and Grace waved from the steps, wrapped in shawls over their nightclothes. Bring back sweets, Oliver called. Bring back yourself, Grace added. Thomas smiled up at them. I shall do both, he promised. When the carriage disappeared down the lane, the house felt too large. All day Emily moved through her tasks with an undercurrent of restlessness. She read to the children. She oversaw their lessons. She asked Mrs. Harding's opinion on menus for the coming week, and listened as Lady Agatha muttered suggestions about her future wardrobe. Grey, Lady Agatha said. You must have some grey silk. It is dignified. And proper lace. Not too much, or they will call you a peacock who bought feathers with borrowed money. I have never owned silk, Emily said in wonder, or lace. You will, Lady Agatha said briskly. If we are to show them you can wear a title, you must at least look like it. By evening, when the lamps were lit and still no word had come, Emily's nerves felt raw. She stood at the nursery window while Oliver and Grace built a tower of wooden blocks. Will Papa be cross when he comes home? Oliver asked suddenly. Why would he? Emily asked. Because people are being unkind, he said. Sometimes when people are unkind, grown-ups come back cross even if they do not wish to be. He will be tired, Emily said. But he will not be cross with you. Or with me. With Lord Ashford? Grace asked. Perhaps with Lord Ashford, Emily said, a small smile touching her lips. A clatter in the courtyard made her start. Then came the roll of wheels. He is back, Oliver cried, scattering blocks everywhere. Stay, Emily said quickly. I will see. She hurried to the main staircase just as the front door opened. Mr. Price admitted Thomas and Mr. Collins, both coated with road dust, both looking as if the day had weighed heavily on them. Emily's heart leaped into her throat. She stopped halfway down the stairs. Thomas looked up and saw her. For a moment his face was unreadable. Then he smiled, tired but genuine. It appears, he said up to her, That Weatherford will stand after all. She exhaled, not realizing she had been holding her breath. Come to the study, he added. Both of you, he said to Emily and Lady Agatha, who had appeared from the drawing-room like a general answering a call to arms. We have much to tell. They gathered around the hearth in the study. Mr. Collins took the same chair he always did, as if its familiarity steadied him. How did they receive you? Lady Agatha asked at once. Badly, Thomas said dryly. As expected. Lord Ashford did not attend in person, but his lawyer and 2 business friends did. They were offended on his behalf. They spoke much of honour and stability. And of me? Emily asked quietly. They spoke of you, he admitted, not by name. As a certain individual whose influence has had unfortunate consequences. Emily held his gaze. And what did you say? I said, he replied, that the only unfortunate consequence of your influence was the revelation of truths I should have seen sooner. Mr. Collins cleared his throat. Lord Ashford's party demanded full repayment of all extended credit inside 6 months and hinted at legal action. And you, Lady Agatha pressed. We refused the time frame, Collins said, and we insisted on the original schedule. When they threatened court, His Grace suggested that any public proceeding would require a thorough examination of why the engagement was broken. Lady Agatha's eyes narrowed. At which point, they would have to decide whether airing Margaret's behaviour was worth the satisfaction. Exactly, Thomas said. I told them I would prefer the matter remain private, out of respect for their family, but that I was prepared to defend my decisions in any venue they chose. Emily stared at him. You would have let the world know for my sake, for the children's? For our sake, he corrected. I will not live a life built on silent secrets. Mr. Collins smiled faintly. They did not expect such firmness, or such willingness to drag their own name through the mud if necessary. Bullies seldom do. In the end, Thomas said, they accepted a compromise. They will withdraw from one of the larger projects, but they will not call in existing debts early. We will lose some potential profit, but we will not be destroyed. And Lord Ashford? Lady Agatha asked. He is furious, Collins said. Privately. But publicly he will say little. He dislikes losing money more than he likes making points. He will paint the matter as a mutual parting due to irreconcilable differences. That much is true, Thomas said calmly. And the gossip? Emily asked. Will it become worse? For a time, Collins said honestly. Your engagement, he nodded respectfully toward Emily, will provide fresh fuel, but there are other scandals. The world has a short memory when it comes to outrage, especially when the target refuses to beg for its pardon. Lady Agatha sat back, exhaling. Well, she said, it seems we have survived the first battle. Barely. Thomas reached for Emily's hand where it rested on her skirt. He did not care that his aunt and solicitor saw. Not barely, he said. Decisively enough, we will tighten our belts. We will seek other partners, but we are not at their mercy. Emily felt his fingers close around hers and had to look down for a moment to hide the shine in her eyes. What did they say when they learned you intend to marry a maid? Lady Agatha asked bluntly. They said I was throwing myself away, Thomas replied. I said I was throwing away pretense and reclaiming my own judgment. Then I left before they could answer. Yes, Lady Agatha murmured. That sounds like you. Mr. Collins rose. I will send you a written summary in the morning, Your Grace, he said. For now, I imagine you wish to be with your children. And with my fiancé, Thomas said. Emily stiffened slightly at the word, though she had heard it from his lips before, in private. To hear it in front of others made it real in a new way. Yes, she said softly. The wedding was set for 6 weeks later. Lady Agatha insisted that any longer delay would stretch the scandal out like stale pastry. A small ceremony was planned at the chapel on the Weatherford estate. Only family, close friends, and a few neighbours of long standing were invited. No one from Lord Ashford's circle received an invitation. You will be married where it began, Nurse Ellen told Emily, as she brushed out Grace's hair one evening. In the place where you first watched over them. Emily smiled, fingers tracing the stitching on her plain apron. I still feel as if I might wake and find it all a story I told myself, she said. That I went too far, and this is my punishment, or my reward, or some strange dream. It is no dream, Nurse Ellen said. Buttons do not pop off dresses in dreams, And they will, once you go about in silk. Preparations filled the days. A dressmaker from the nearest town arrived with tapes and pins. Emily stood on a chair while pins flashed, feeling like a girl playing at dress-up. "You have good shoulders," the dressmaker remarked. "Simple lines will suit you, no need for frills." "I should look like myself," Emily said. "Just cleaner." The dressmaker laughed. "You will look like a duchess, my dear. The rest will follow." Wedding gifts arrived from unexpected quarters. An old friend of Thomas's father sent a pair of silver candlesticks in honor of the courage that still seems to run in the Weatherford line. A small group of tenants pooled their pennies to buy a carved wooden cradle, for any new little ones the Lord might send. Emily touched its smooth edge with trembling fingers, unable to imagine that far ahead and yet suddenly longing for it. On the morning of the wedding, the sky was clear. Emily woke before dawn, heart racing. She sat up in the small room she had not yet left, listening to the house stir. Distantly, she heard Oliver's excited chatter and Grace's higher notes. "They will spill something," she murmured. "On their best clothes. Of course they will." A knock sounded at her door. Lady Agatha entered without waiting for an answer, followed by Mrs. Harding carrying the wedding gown like a cloud. "Well," Lady Agatha said, looking her up and down, "it seems we have reached the point of no return." "Good morning, my lady," Emily said, trying not to appear as nervous as she felt. "Sit," Lady Agatha commanded. "Hair first." They worked in a quiet bustle. Mrs. Harding laced the gown with surprising gentleness. "You have done well by this house," the housekeeper said gruffly. "Do not let anyone tell you otherwise." "Thank you," Emily whispered. Lady Agatha fastened a small, simple brooch at her throat. "This was your predecessor's," she said. "She would have wanted you to wear it." Emily touched the cool metal. "I do not deserve—" "Do not say that word today," Lady Agatha cut in. "It wearies me. You are marrying him. That settles the question of deserving in this house." When they were done, Emily hardly recognized herself in the small mirror. The grey silk fell cleanly, the lace at her sleeves simple and neat. Her hair, usually braided and pinned hastily, now lay coiled in a smooth knot, a few soft strands framing her face. "You look like a duchess," Mrs. Harding said with satisfaction. "I feel like Emily," she replied, "somewhere underneath all this." "Keep that part," Lady Agatha said. "We have enough duchesses who forget who they were before the coronet." In the chapel, Thomas stood at the front with Oliver and Grace on either side. Oliver wore a tiny waistcoat and tried hard not to fidget. Grace's small white dress had a sash that refused to stay tied. "Miss Emily will come," Grace whispered. "Yes," Thomas said. "And when she does, you must walk with her." "I will hold her hand," Grace said, "so she does not fall." "Good," Thomas replied, throat tight. When the door at the back of the chapel opened, the murmuring stilled. Emily stepped in, escorted not by a father, but by Nurse Ellen, who insisted on taking that place. The nurse's eyes shone, though she tried to hide it with a brisk expression. "You walk straight now," she muttered. "Do not shuffle like a girl at her first dance." Emily did not hear most of it. She saw only Thomas at the far end standing tall, his expression open and full in a way she had never seen in any drawing room. Halfway down, Oliver and Grace darted forward, as planned. Grace grabbed Emily's hand. Oliver took the other. "We came," Grace announced, as if Emily might have doubted it. "I see that," Emily whispered, laughing softly. "Thank you." Together, they walked the last steps. The ceremony was simple. The vicar spoke of vows, of love that protects, of houses built on rock rather than sand. Thomas answered clearly when asked if he would take Emily as his wife. Emily's voice trembled only once when asked the same. "With all that I am," she said, steadying. "I do." When they signed the register, she saw her new name written beside his, Emily Hargreaves, Duchess of Weatherford. The letters did not look like hers yet. They would. Outside, the small group of guests gathered on the steps. "You have made a bold choice, my boy," said Lord Pierce, Thomas's father's old friend. "I like it. The world needs more boldness that serves something other than vanity." "Thank you," Thomas said. He felt Emily's hand in the crook of his arm, light and sure. "At least she will not marry you for your money," Lord Pierce added with a chuckle. "You have less of it than you did." Emily flushed. "My lord, I assure you. Hush, child, he said. It was a compliment. You will keep him honest. I can see it. Oliver and Grace danced around them, scattering petals. May we call her Mama now? Oliver asked, stopping abruptly. The adults fell silent. Thomas looked at Emily. The question belonged to her. She knelt so she was eye level with the twins. If you wish to, she said softly. I would be honored, but you may call me what feels right for you. Grace studied her face with serious eyes. Mama Emily, she decided, pronouncing each syllable carefully. Oliver nodded. Yes. Mama Emily. Emily's throat closed. She gathered them both into her arms. I will do my best, she whispered into their hair. I promise. That night, after the modest feast and the gentle teasing and the toasts, Weatherford Hall felt different. Not grander, not richer, but more awake. In the drawing room, after the servants had withdrawn, Thomas and Emily sat together on a small sofa, the fire burning low. I am tired, Emily admitted. My cheeks hurt from smiling. Your smile has done more to repair this house than 100 investors, he said. She laughed, leaning her head briefly against his shoulder. Do not say that where Mr. Collins can hear. He will try to put it in a ledger. He already mutters about intangibles, Thomas said. Let him. I have numbers enough in my life. This is something else. They sat quietly for a moment, listening to the muffled sounds of Nurse Ellen settling the children above. Are you happy? He asked at last, voice low. She considered the question honestly. Yes, she said. Frightened, uncertain, overwhelmed. But beneath all that, yes, very much. He turned slightly toward her. May I kiss my wife properly now? He asked. She smiled, heart beating fast. I believe that is permitted. He lifted her chin gently and kissed her, not as he had in the nursery, careful and brief, but with all the feeling he had kept in check for weeks. It was still tender, but deeper now, layered with gratitude and wonder and a promise of years. When they parted, she rested her forehead against his. We will make mistakes, she said. I will say the wrong thing to someone important. You will forget that I still worry when Oliver climbs too high in the oak tree. I will hold the ladder, he said. You will call him down. Between us, he will land somewhere safe. She smiled, eyes bright. That is all I ask. In the months that followed, the world did exactly as Lady Agatha had predicted. Some doors closed. A certain London hostess regretted that her drawing room could not accommodate the new Duchess of Weatherford. A gossip sheet printed a caricature of the Duke who married his own maid, giving Emily a basket and an absurd cap. She read it once, hand trembling, then tossed it into the fire. Does it hurt? Thomas asked. Yes, she said frankly, but not as much as I thought it would. I know what is true. And what is that? He asked. That I am no one's secret, she said. You did not hide me. You walked beside me into the chapel. You let them draw their little pictures, and you did not flinch. I can bear a great deal under that kind of light. He kissed her hair. You do not have to bear it alone, he said. Every unkind word about you touches me first. Then let us both be toughened by it, she answered. Other doors, surprisingly, opened. A vicar's wife from a neighbouring parish paid a visit, bringing a pie and a shy smile. I wanted to say, she told Emily privately, that I was a governess before I married. The ladies whispered about me too. It does not last, if you live in such a way that gossip grows bored. And the children, oh, the children always know the truth. Emily held on to those words. She threw herself into learning what she needed to know as Duchess. Lady Agatha drilled her on precedence. Mrs. Harding instructed her in household accounts. She visited tenants with Thomas, listening as much as she spoke. She made mistakes, apologized when needed, laughed at herself when possible. With Oliver and Grace, she moved from maid to mother, as if no boundary had ever existed. She kissed scraped knees. She scolded gently over muddy boots. She sat between their beds at night when storms rattled the windows, telling stories until their breathing slowed. Sometimes very late, when the house was quiet and Thomas had fallen asleep beside her, she lay awake and marveled. I was almost sent away, she would think. I almost packed that suitcase and left. Instead, she remained, and the house that had once felt cold now held warmth in its corners. One spring afternoon, nearly a year after the wedding, Emily stood on the terrace watching Oliver and Grace race across the lawn. Thomas joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "They are growing," she said. "Grace's dress is nearly too short. We will have to let down the hem," he said, "or ask my aunt to find yet another way to instruct you on the correct stitch for such alterations." Emily laughed. "She tries not to show it, but I think she is proud of us." "I know she is," he said. "I overheard her tell Lord Pierce last week, 'My nephew may be a fool, but he chose a very sensible fool to marry. She will keep him from complete disaster.'" "That is high praise indeed," Emily said, eyes shining. They watched the children a while longer. The wind carried their laughter up to the terrace. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. "Regret what?" he said. "Breaking with Margaret, selling that parcel of land, marrying you, refusing to bow to Lord Ashford. There are many candidates." "Any of it," she said. "The hard path instead of the easy," he considered. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "when I see the old ledgers and remember how much simpler it might have been to sign one more contract, attend one more dull dinner, and never ask what lay behind closed nursery doors, I feel a pang, not of regret for the choice, but for the illusion of safety I surrendered. And then," she prompted. "And then I come home," he said. "I walk into a house that is no longer hollow. I hear my children shout Papa and Mama Emily from the stairs. I find my wife in the nursery, hair coming loose while she crawls on the floor playing some ridiculous game. And I know that whatever we lost, we gained more." She leaned into him, content. "I cannot promise the future will be easy," he said, "but I can promise this. Whatever comes, loss, gain, scandal, quiet, we will face it together." She nodded, eyes on the children. "That is all I ever wanted," she said. "Not comfort, not a title, just together." Oliver turned then, spotting them. "Mama Emily," he shouted, "Papa, come race with us." Grace waved both arms in wild invitation. Emily laughed, the sound bright and clear. "Shall we?" Thomas asked. "We shall," she said, lifting her skirts just enough to run. "Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.